The all-time point guard rankings are, well, they're kind of all over the place. Most fans are aware of who the best point guards are, but at the same time, it's hard to rank each one individually, and I'm sure everybody's list is different. John Stockton is, in my opinion, the hardest point guard to evaluate, and I'll explain why. How's it going, fellas? My name's Andy, and today we're gonna talk about John Stockton and how good he actually was. But before we start, I'd like to give a shout out to my sponsor, SeatGeek. SeatGeek is an app that aggregates ticket prices from all over the web to help you find the best deals for games, concerts, Broadway shows, and other events. The prices marked in green are good, while the ones in red are bad. I've used the app to buy tickets before, and the process was very smooth. The app is very easy to use, and you can also see the view from your seats before you buy your tickets, which is my favorite feature. Use my promo code ANDY at checkout to get $20 off your first order. Thank you to SeatGeek for sponsoring this video. Alright, let's get started. First, let me give you some stats about John Stockton. He's the all-time leader in assists by a wide margin. He's the all-time leader in steals by a wide margin. He holds a bunch of assist records. 5 of the top 6 of the single-season assist averages belong to Stockton, including the highest average ever at 14.5. That was in the 1989-90 season. His assist numbers may or may not be inflated, I don't know. Some reports say that the Jazz scorekeepers were a bit generous with giving him more assists. I don't know if it's true, but it's whatever. He still holds the records. For 10 straight seasons, from 1988 to 1997, Stockton made the All-Star team 9 times, with averages of nearly 16 points and 13 assists per game during that time period. He finished his career with 11 All-NBA selections, 5-time All-Defense, and led the league in assists for 9 different seasons. That's all incredible. His longevity and durability was also insane. In 19 seasons, he missed only 22 games total. Yeah, 22 games in 19 seasons. That's all he missed. He played all 82 games for 16 different seasons, and in the 1999 lockout season, he played all 50 games there too. If you're wondering what the record for that is, Stockton also holds it. Second place is AC Green with 14 seasons of playing 82 games. So everything I just said there, all those stats I pointed out, that's why a lot of people have Stockton as the second best point guard of all time. He has no championships, no MVPs, but he holds so many records and his consistency and longevity were crazy. Now, let's move on to the other side of the John Stockton argument, and some reasons why he might not be ranked as high as he is. A lot of Stockton's greatness comes from hindsight. You know, people look back at his stats and numbers and say, wow, this guy was amazing. But believe it or not, the perception of John during his playing days was not as great as it is right now. Cause right now, everyone would say that John was the best point guard of the 1990s. But the truth is, it was kinda debatable back then, and other point guards outshined him, especially during the playoffs. You had Kevin Johnson, who at the peak of his career was putting up 20 and 12, and he was one of the most exciting players at the time. You had Terry Porter, who outplayed Stockton in the 1991 and 92 playoffs, yet he was only a fringe all-star. Later on, you had Gary Payton, who was a better defender and a better scorer, and he played with an edge. Now, the perception of John was that he was still an amazing player, and obviously at the end of his career, he had a better career than all those guys. But there were times during his prime when people really questioned his ability to match up against other elite point guards. This was very evident in the MVP voting. The highest placement that John ever got was 7th in the MVP race, and that was in 1989. He never finished any higher than 7th in any season of his career. So the question now is, despite Stockton's insane counting stats and longevity, can he really be considered as the second best point guard ever, even though he was never a legit MVP candidate? You know, it depends. Some fans value longevity more than peak performance. Prime Stockton was great, but he didn't stand out as much as other all-time greats. There's no wrong answer, and it's reasonable to put him a bit lower because of that. A common comparison I've seen is between Stockton and Steve Nash. The similarities are there. Nash was the better shooter, but Stock was a gritty, tough defender. But overall, they're both consistent, they're both pass-first point guards, they're both great shooters, and they're both white. So they get compared a lot cause that's how we roll. They also both played with a dominant power forward who they were known for running pick and rolls with. But despite these similarities in playstyle, Stockton was not viewed the same way as Nash at all. Nash was a two-time MVP, the undisputed best point guard in the league for a couple years. He elevated his play even more in the playoffs, and everyone knew he was the main reason why the Suns were so good. He made that offense work. On the other hand, Stockton was thought of as the second guy, and it was Karl Malone's team, not his. At the time, everyone believed Malone was more important, hence why he was the one getting the MVP votes. Regardless, Stockton still had his moments, and during his playing days he was definitely underrated because many fans did not understand his impact on the game. To be honest, he was kinda boring to watch, and even though he was a pass-first point guard, he didn't have the flash of guys before him like Magic. Stockton only had a handful of games where he completely dominated and took over. But besides that, he was always the steady engine that kept the Jazz offense running. Over time, everyone started to appreciate his career more. We talk about Wilt's scoring record being almost impossible to break, but Stockton's all-time steals record and all of his assist records are basically untouchable too. Like, nobody else is even close. Throughout his career, Stockton had some amazing moments. In 1988, he tied Magic Johnson's record for the most assists in a playoff game with 24. Coincidentally, he did it while playing against Magic and the Lakers. It was a competitive 7-game series where the Jazz would ultimately lose, but Stockton averaged 16.4 assists for the series. His total of 115 assists in 7 games is a record that still stands today. And just like with every other assist record, it's very unlikely to be broken. Probably never. However, Stockton's most memorable moment happened during the 1997 playoffs. The Jazz made it all the way to the Western Conference Finals, and at this stage of his career, he has not yet reached the finals. Him and Karl Malone have been a dynamic duo for over a decade, but continue to get eliminated by other powerhouses, namely the Houston Rockets and Seattle Supersonics. This time, the Rockets added another piece to their team, 11-time All-Star Charles Barkley. Once again, they were the obstacle blocking their way from the finals. Despite struggling in the previous rounds, Stockton put together a tremendous playoff series, averaging over 20 points and 10 assists, shooting 54% from the field and 94% at the line. The most memorable play of the series was also the most memorable play of his entire career. Game 6, with the Jazz up 3-2, it was an elimination game for the Rockets. The ball was inbounded to Stockton with a couple seconds left, and he hits a buzzer-beating, game-winning 3. Despite always being a cool, calm guy, it was the most emotional that Stockton has ever been. He knew the Rockets have been in their way for years, and hitting that shot to reach the finals meant so much to him and his teammates. Another memorable moment was a couple weeks later, in the 1997 finals. Game 4 was an incredibly low-scoring game, with the final score being 78-73. Near the end of the game, Stockton made 2 clutch full-court passes back-to-back, sealing the win and tying the series at 2 games apiece. Unfortunately, as you all know, the Jazz would not be able to pull it out, losing in the finals in back-to-back years. Over the years, as Stockton and the team would get older, they would never make it back there, and by 2003, he quietly retired at the age of 41. In 2009, he entered the Hall of Fame, the same Hall of Fame class as Michael Jordan. So how good was John Stockton actually? He was around a top 10 player in his prime, but what really made him special was his longevity and durability, playing at such a high level for so long and barely ever getting injured. Maybe he never had the highest peak or crazy, explosive games, but his consistency set him apart from his peers. And off the court, he was also very different. Despite everyone thinking he was just a normal guy, he was unique in his own way. During an era where the NBA was blowing up and popular media was all over the place, Stockton was still the same guy, quiet, reserved, and he just did his own thing. Fun fact, he never even hired an agent. He negotiated all of his contracts by himself, face to face with Larry Miller, the owner of the Jazz. That's pretty amazing. Anyway, that's all folks. In my opinion, Stockton is still the second greatest point guard of all time. Even though his peak was not as high as some others, nobody can match his longevity and all of his records will likely never be broken. Let me know your thoughts on Stockton. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and as always, I'll see you next time. Peace.